Sydney, I can't believe you just said that.
Do you believe
You said that
NASA
moon landing was faked.
made it? I was going to ask you the same thing.
Well, that was an exciting piece, and we'll be sure to catch up with that one and follow it, as he said, in September. But we're going to bring up a man that knows all the answers to all things, not just oil and gas, but also potentially around moon landings as well. We have John Kingston. John, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Great to be back. Not in person like last time, but great to be back anyway.
No, it was great to have you in studio last week. It was great to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, I know. That was great. It was a quick trip, but I really did enjoy meeting the limited number of people that working there at Freight Al.
Now, we are talking about the AB5 situation. Can you tell me what is happening as of today?
Well, as of today, they're going back to court. Now, first of all, I want to preface anything I say by, I don't want anybody to interpret this as thinking that the current outcome is in doubt. There will be a sort of technical step today in federal district court in which the mandate that came down from the appellate court that says the injunction against AB5 and trucking must be lifted. One lawyer said that there might be some ambiguity in that, and that ambiguity will go away today. So you will have to comply with AB5. But the reality is that the original suit by the California Trucking Association, which goes back, I think, to 2018, was never fully adjudicated. You had the injunction handed down on New Year's Eve 2019. That stayed in place until the appellate court ruled in April 2021 that the injunction should be lifted. The injunction was allowed to stay while the California Trucking Association pursued the case up to the Supreme Court. And then, of course, the Supreme Court on June 30th denied certiorari, and that kicked it back. But there's never really been I won't say a trial or a summary judgment that establishes an adjudication of the original CTA case. So that's still alive. Now, you have hanging out there this 800-pound gorilla, which was a decision of the appellate court, which said that they felt that the conflict between AB5 and the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, the so-called F4A, did not, in fact, bar AB5 from being implemented in trucking. So that obviously is sort of clearly a factor here, but the CTA is pursuing a case nonetheless. So, it's possible we get, let's say, some kind of summary judgment from the lower district court that says the CTA is right. They're asking for another injunction. Then maybe it goes to the appellate court again. Maybe you get a little different mix of the people on the appellate court. Remember, the decision by the appellate court in April 2021 was 2-1. It was not unanimous. So right now, if you're a trucking company in California, you operate on the assumption that AB5 applies to you, but there is an ongoing legal proceeding, and we will continue to watch it.
Now, John, as we saw the decision kind of come up to this point, I can only imagine that there were some companies potentially getting prepped for this, or did you see from your perspective that it kind of caught everyone by surprise and everyone's still scrambling, or has everyone kind of been preparing for this moment just in case?
Well, I think anybody who's smart has been preparing for it, certainly those with smart attorneys. I will say that, we're 2 months now from the Supreme Court decision to not review it. And, the models to deal with it kind of really haven't changed. There's the idea, first of all, leaving the state. There's the idea of making your workers employees. And actually, I'm going to be working on a story this week about some of that happening at Universal Logistics Holdings. There is the two-check model that we've talked about that TransForce is primarily pushing, in which you will lease your equipment to a trucking company, but you will be hired by TransForce as a full-time employee, and then TransForce will sort of contract out those full-time employees to the trucking company. And there's the brokerage model, in which people go out and get their own authority. Now, that's like a $20,000 investment, and then they have freight brokered into them. So I have not heard of, let's say, option 5. Those are the 4 that are still out there. If there's any others that have come up, I've not seen it. So that seems to be the way to go so far.
Do you have any inkling of what decisions could be made today in court?
Well, I think I was, as I said, this one attorney said there was, in some people's minds, some ambiguity about the mandate from the appellate court that said, okay, our ruling from April now goes into effect. District court needs to enforce it, so that will happen. There may be there's a request by the not a request by either side, by both sides for a calendar of filing briefs. That calendar doesn't really kick off until October or November, so you're not even going to get briefs on this case for a couple of months. So, I mean, if anything substantial happened today, it would just be stunning. I mean, the only thing I won't even say I could possibly see, I don't see it, but would be if the judge comes in and puts in a new injunction. I don't know how. I would need a good lawyer here to tell me how you could put in a new injunction after the appellate court lifted the injunction and the Supreme Court denied review. So that request is out there by the APA for a new injunction. I can't imagine it happening today, but that would maybe be the only thing.
And John, of course,
But
this is, I think,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
a question I think gets floated from time to time is around AB5 and the potential impacts on other states. If other states are watching, of course, first one I think that comes to my mind is Illinois potentially. Are there any conversations that you're hearing or talks about other states potentially adopting this same policy as well?
There's talk. There's talk on the state level. I think what far more important right now would be the new federal rule that the Biden administration is drawing up for the wage and hour division of the Department of Labor. I was on one of the calls. They took did a feedback call several weeks ago, and it seemed to me that first of all the callers who called in were freelancers, and they were, except for one, I think, and they were all saying, "Don't do anything stupid here," and they all seemed to believe that the ABC test would be in this rule, even though the Obama administration rule, which was considered, more favorable to the idea of making people employees, being considered employees, did not have the ABC test in it. So I think that's really the thing to watch: is does the ABC test show up in this Biden administration rule, which right now is being proposed. There's a Trump administration rule that was lifted, then a court ordered that back in place. That's in there now, but the Biden administration is working on a rule, and there seems to be a consensus out there, or certainly a fear, that the ABC test would be part of this.
John, you teased a few things you might be working on this week. Can you tell us what we might find you doing?
Well, tomorrow is the BMO earnings, and I'm probably the only person in the whole world who cares about the BMO earnings in trucking, but I think they're important numbers. BMO is a significant lender to the trucking industry. If you go into a show like the Truckload Carriers Association or the ATA, you walk into the exhibit hall, they're right there. They have a gigantic booth. And their quarterly earnings break out the performance of all their various sectors, but including transportation. And it shows the size of write-offs, the size of the loans that they regarded as troubled. And I just think it's great data on the financial health. I will tell you that their customer base is, I know, at the very least 10,000 customers. So if we had a quarter, they do this for the quarter that ends at the end of July. They're on a little different schedule up there. If a lot of truck drivers are starting to get in trouble because of the lower rates, I think you'll see that in the BMO numbers. And so they're coming out tomorrow. So, it's a fairly short story that I write. I get it out pretty quickly. But to me, these are really indicative numbers. And as far as I know, nobody else in the trucking media world picks them up. But we've got them.
John, someone has to do it, and it might as well be you. Thanks so much for covering that, and I'm looking forward to your release on it. Real quick, before we let you go, Drilling Deep, when does that come out?
Well, the final audio version of Drilling Deep will be coming out this Friday. Mike Roth of the North American Council on Freight Efficiency will be our last audio-only guest, and we will switch to video next week.
We are so excited to hear it. We're checking back in with you next week then.
Okay, very good.
See you, John. Now we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now coming up next.